Am I on the... It started? Oh my god, it started. Oh my god, you're here. Oh, hi. I'm going to do the Islamic thing now, okay? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واستبق الباب وقدت قميصه من دبر وألف يا سيدها لدى الباب قالت ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا إلا أن يسجن أو عذاب أليم قال هي راودتني عن نفسي وشهد شاهد من أهلها إن كان قميصه قد من قبل فصدقت وهو من الكاذبين وإن كان قميصه قد من دبر فكذبت وهو من الصادقين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Let's get right to work. Now we are inshallah ta'ala in ayah number 25. I hope to cover until ayah number 27 and some of the the key feature lessons that we can extrapolate from this. The thing to note, first and foremost, I remind you of the principle again. The Quran has a brief way of telling the story. So if Allah mentions a detail, then that detail becomes strategically important, not just for the story to move forward, but for us to learn something from it. So, and if so many details are skipped, you can certainly skip some other details too. So here you have, when we get into ayah number 25, Allah says, وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابِ. They both raced for the door. They both raced for the door. Now this raises a number of questions. The first question is, we heard before, وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. She locked multiple doors. But now he's not running to the doors, they're both racing for the door. Now that obviously gives room for a lot of speculation. What comes to mind perhaps is, you can have a room with multiple doors, some of them leading to more inner corners of the house or other quarters, further, the room within a room kind of thing. And then there are some doors that lead to the main hallway or the more public area, or they open up to actually the more public accessible parts of the house, or opens up to the living room, etc., right? The idea, al-bab, would maybe suggest also the main door. So there may be smaller exits, or maybe a door that leads to a closet for something, or some other bedroom. Even nowadays they have like these Jack and Jill type rooms, right? Where one connects to the other. But in older architecture, it was actually pretty normal to have rooms connected to other rooms instead of a hallway binding all the rooms together. So it seems he makes a run for the main door, but how do we move the second question that comes to mind here is, how is the story moving forward? The last thing we saw was that she said something and he responded. That's the last thing we saw. And that conversation is definitely not happening while they're racing. That means things are still rather calm. And she's having a conversation with him and he's responding calmly and he's actually giving her a reasonable response to come to her senses. But it seems that she starts to approach him closer and closer, and he's realizing that this is not a good thing, so he's pulling back to the point where, you don't just say those words and start dashing. It's not a quick transition like that, but rather he's retreating, realizing this is not a good thing. She's inching towards him, and he realizes this is not an okay thing, so he turns around, and maybe he's not even running yet. But the moment she grabs a hold of his shirt, he realizes this is no good. I need to get out of here now fast, right? So even though he was about to take a dignified exit, he now decides to make a run for it before things get any worse. And that may be a very plausible explanation for why the shirt gets ripped. Or, I would also think Yusuf alayhi salam, a young man, can run a lot faster than an older woman. Even if she was a younger woman, he's physically probably more capable of running away from her, not to the point where she can catch his shirt. But the idea is, I think, that he didn't see the state of emergency. He thought he could have a dignified conversation and walk out of there without trouble. And as he's heading to the door, turning around and going the way he should, she grabs a hold of him, or she gets too close to grab a hold of him, and now he's making a run for the main exit. Now the main exit, even though, let's just assume that she locked that one too. Because the Quran already told us, وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ, she locked all the doors. If those doors are locked and he doesn't have access to the key, maybe it's a latch that you can open. But maybe it's not. Maybe it is by key, and only the owner of the bedroom has the key. That's possible too. In the ghallaqa, really you just get the idea of something locked up. So let's just assume worst case scenario that it's locked and he doesn't have the key. Then how does it make sense to run towards the door? Well, that's the best he can do. And if he makes some noise or even bangs on the door, if that's the main door, servants on the other side, others on the other side can hear what's going on. So that's his best bet. But even if you assume that that door is locked and he can open it, the imagery is very powerful. The imagery is of someone locked in a place where they are trapped to do the wrong thing. And there are urges that are, it's not just the situation or the entrapment, but there's also human urges, we're all human beings. And yet, even if you see a door that seems closed at the time, make a run for it. Like, no, you shouldn't be complacent in a situation and say, well, you know, what could I do? The doors were closed. No, go bang into the door, crash through it. Do whatever you got to do. Did you even take a step to save yourself? Or did you just look at the surroundings and say, well, the doors were locked, what could I have done? Right? So that's the powerful lesson here is, even if the door is closed, make a run for it. Even if you think it's unlikely that something will work out, go for it. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever is truly fearful of Allah, Allah will make a way out for them. And you know, I use the word fearful, but taqwa is something more than that. You know, khafa or khawf is fear. Taqwa is actually to protect yourself because you're afraid. So in practical language, if you were afraid of a thunderstorm and you closed the windows, you exhibited, you acted in accordance with taqwa. If you just sat in your bed and you were scared, that was khawf, that wasn't taqwa. Taqwa means to take a precautionary measure because of your fear. You follow? So it's not just a feeling of fear. So usually sometimes we say, have taqwa, which people assume to mean what? Have fear of Allah. No, 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 no. It's the action to protect, because taqwa actually comes from the Arabic word wiqaya. And wiqaya means to protect. And ittiqa actually means to protect yourself. Now obviously, someone takes extra security measures when they're scared. Right? So the fear is kind of understood when you are doing something to protect yourself. What I'm saying here is, he sees almost an impossible, no exit type situation, and he's going to run for it anyway. وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابِ. The other interesting thing is, if you want to be very literal about it, you would imagine she's trying to catch him, he's trying to get to the door. So he's racing to the door while she's racing to him, right? But the ayah says they both race to the door. وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابِ, which is also interesting. It's very telling. Why would she want to race to the door in the Quran? Some say this is because the Quran is using brevity in speech. What that means is the Quran is being brief. Basically, you can understand on your own. She was trying to catch him. He's trying to catch the door. But the way to put that in brief language is they were both running to the door. I, however, though I accept that explanation, I'm more inclined to another explanation of this, which is actually she, in fact, was running for the door. She knows that he's made up his mind. She knows what kind of character he is. She knows that he won't falter. But she's not going to give up on her entrapment. So if haytalak didn't work, if her trying to seduce him didn't work, then she'll try some other tactic or some other kind of abusive way, but she's not giving up on him that easily. And she wants to, and the only way she knows this is ever going to happen is if he remains trapped inside. Also, maybe she realized she just tore his shirt, so she better keep him inside. You know, that might be the case too. But I would argue that here, the more prominent case seems to be she ran for the door to make sure the key's not still in it, or the latch is properly on, or get in the way of it. You'll have to move me out of the way before you get out of this door. She wants to stand between him and the door, and she knows he's not going to touch her, right? So she's trying to set that trap up for him. And that's also representative of something. You could be as pure as Yusuf alayhi salam. You could be from a good family. You can't get a better family than the son of Ishaq, or the son of Yaqub, the grandson of Ishaq, and the great-grandson of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That's a pretty good family. You could be the purest soul, but Allah might put you in a situation where you're trapped to the point where your shirt can get ripped off. And the wrongdoers that want to make you slip will use every trap they can, lock every door they can. And when you try to make an escape for the door, they'll try to get between themselves and the door, between you and the door. So what Allah is telling us in this ayah is, you don't have to look for fitna. Sometimes fitna will look for you. You don't have to, and you're still human. You can still fail. Even if you say, this wasn't my fault. This is, Yusuf alayhi salam doesn't have a choice to put himself in that situation. He's a servant. If he's going to get called to the room, he's going to go to the room. That's what he's been doing his whole life. And he's obligated to do so because he owes the master that's, providing for him. إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. So he's in that state. But a lot of times people put themselves willingly, by choice, in a situation, and then they say, well, the doors were locked. Why'd you walk in? Why'd you go to this situation? Why'd you go to a situation that you knew is fitna for you, that you knew you have weakness to, you knew you have susceptibility to? You went in there, now you don't have an excuse that the doors got locked or somebody ran after me or my shirt got torn, etc., etc. You put yourself in that situation. But Allah is teaching us here, not only Yusuf wouldn't want to put himself in that situation, but he didn't intentionally put himself in that situation, and you might find yourself in a situation like that, where you didn't put yourself in that situation, but somebody's obsessed with you. Somebody went crazy for you. Somebody did something crazy to you. That can happen. And in that situation, things can get pretty aggressive. This is the second time we're finding Yusuf alayhi salam losing a shirt. Right? So a lot of people have questions about the shirt. What's the value of the shirt? The story, the shirt keeps coming up one way or the other. There's going to be 3 times the shirt's going to happen. This is the second one. First one you guys already know. And there are some thematic observations about the shirt. For example, people talk about how it was used as false evidence in the first case, and it was used to prove the truth in the second case. Right? So in both cases, it's being used as evidence, but once falsely and once correctly. So that's one. Others say, well, those who believe that the shirt, even in the case of Yaqub alayhi salam, wasn't ripped, because they put blood on it, but they didn't rip it, which I don't buy. But they make the parallel, well, one shirt was ripped, and that's why you prove that she's lying, and the other shirt wasn't ripped, and that's how you prove that they're lying. So they kind of try to make that parallel. I see something more than just the use of evidence. I feel, Allahu A'lam, my sense is that the shirt represents dignity also. And not only did the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam abandon him, they also humiliated him by taking his shirt. That's an act of humiliation. And that's something he didn't have control over. And him walking out of this woman's bedroom, if he does escape, with a ripped shirt, is also humiliating. Put yourself in that position to understand. Like when we look at these events in the Quran, when we think of them as a story, we fail to understand these are very real situations. And if you were in a situation like that, and somebody was coming at you this way, and nobody else knows about it, and everybody has respect for them, and you're just a servant, and you're coming out covering yourself because your shirt got ripped, how humiliating would that be? So what we're finding is that one of the most honored people that ever lived, Yusuf alayhi salam, so honored that an entire surah, not a small one, not إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, like a short surah, not the story of, think by comparison, the story of the Kaaba being rescued, right, from the army of the elephants is أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ وَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. Done. And how serious is that event? The rescue of the Kaaba. And then you've got the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, which is a story about dignity, and it's 100 plus ayat. And this is the Quran's way of putting weight on something. And how honored is Yusuf alayhi salam that Allah put the final revelation, He made him such a pivotal part of it. Such a unique part of it that no other prophet gets their story told in this way, like Yusuf alayhi salam gets told dedicated in one place. The point I'm making is, one of the most honored human beings that ever lived, and more honored now because of the Quran than ever even before. And that human being is living a life where he's being humiliated by his own family at one point, and then he's being humiliated by people he trusts or he was entrusted with, and people that were supposed to do right by him, and he was doing right by them. What Allah is telling us is dignified people can get humiliated by those around them. And it may be part of their trial. And if Allah did not spare His prophets from such trials, then we are not immune to that. It will come our way, one way or the other. Now, there could be a part of it where it's our fault. Then we did something, like I said, you put yourself in a fitna situation, you don't get to complain later, how come the doors got closed? How come my shirt got ripped? Well, you had a hand in that too. Another may have their hand in that, that's fine, but you had your hand in that too. You have to own your part of the mistake. I have to own my part of the mistake. But the other part of it is, even if you live a dignified life, even if you didn't do something wrong, It can be that there can be very dubious, very, very ill-intentioned people who do not think of your dignity when it comes to their needs. When it comes, not forget needs, when it comes to their wants. So they can run right over you and not care about what that's going to do to you. So long as you're not, in some cases they don't even care if you're physically harmed. But so long as you're not physically harmed, they're like, what's the big deal? It's just a little humiliation. It's okay. Everybody gets that. No problem. When someone doesn't have respect for themselves, it's very hard for them to have respect for anybody else. It's very difficult for them, right? And clearly her actions are illustrating that she doesn't have respect for herself. So why would she respect the honor of, Yusuf alayhi salam? So anyhow, she, they run towards the door. وَقَدَّتْ قَمِيصَهُ مِنْ دُبُرٍ, and she tore his shirt from behind. That's the part I already explained before, working through it. وَأَلْفَيَا سَيِّدَهَا لَدَى الْبَابِ, and they both found, this is interesting language, I'll translate this as, they both stumbled upon, because, ilfa in Arabic is different from wajdan. Wajada, to find. Like if you're looking for something and you found it, wajadtul miftah, wajadtul mushaf, I found the mushaf. Alfa means you weren't even looking and, oh, look what I just found. Like you weren't expecting it and there's a donut on the table, a Boston cream of all things, that would be ilfa. Because I thought the boys destroyed them. And here there is a piece of Jannah sitting right there for me to devour and get fat. So the point is that ilfa or alfa yulfi actually means to stumble upon something that you weren't expecting. They both found, the word uses they both stumbled upon, which suggests that they were not, the man of the house was not expected at the time. And she wouldn't have done the shady business she did if she knew that the guy's at home. So she was only trying this tactic. If she went out of the way to lock the door, she definitely checked the schedule too. You understand? Like that, there's a scheming involved here that would incorporate that. But for some reason, the man of the house has come back home for something or another. And for some reason, what he needs is in that room. Allah designs the life story in such a way that what he needs is in that room. So he says they ran to the door and they both stumbled upon, now listen to this language, Sayyidaha ladal bab. Now I'll, in a shallow way, translate, they both stumbled upon her husband right at the door. That's the translation. They both stumbled upon her husband right at the door. And it's interesting that when you say her husband, it's ignoring his part. Right? It's not mentioning him. It's only mentioning her. Right? They could have said they stumbled upon their master or his master. It could have been, the identity of the husband could have been attributed to Yusuf alayhi salam, but it's attributed to her. Even though the first verb is they both found, or they both stumbled upon. If they both stumble upon him, guess what? He's struggling to open the door, and clearly she's caught up with him, because by the time the door opens, they're both there. They're both at the door. And she's trying to yank him off the door, and maybe he has the key from the inside, or Yusuf is able to open the door, and he's right there. He's about to walk in. Or maybe he would say, what's going on in there? And the door opens, and he's right there. Sayyidah halad al-bab. Okay. So now, why Sayyid? In the Quran, if you study marriage and husband and wife, the terminology for husband and wife, you don't find Sayyid used typically for a husband or wife, or Sayyida or Sayyid. You don't. This is the only time. And Sayyid actually means leader and authority also. Sada means leadership. Like Sadat Quraysh, the plural, is used for the leaders of Quraysh. Why use this term? I think there's a literary sense here, wallahu ta'ala alam, that she did not respect any authority. She had no respect for the mention of Allah, ma'adallah innahu rabbi ahsanul mathwaya. She had no respect for the fact that he's trying to say, I'm honoring my Rabbi, the owner of the house. He's, at least from her point of view, that's what he might be saying. But the only authority she could ever think of as someone who has some say over what she does is who? Is the husband. So it's actually, oh, so you only recognize him as your Sayyid when he's in front of your face? When you stumble upon him at the door? Now he has authority over you? Where was his authority when the doors were locked? Clearly he wasn't your Sayyid then. He wasn't your leader then. So it's in a sense, an ironic use of the term to say now she recognizes his authority, now she's afraid. Now, she's going to say something. Now we're at the door, Yusuf alayhi salam's shirt is torn, he's probably panting, she's probably, in some state or the other, but all of a sudden, she becomes a different person. There's a split transformation, and she is someone that you would not recognize from a second ago. A second ago, she's the pursuer, she's the crazy lady, she's running after him, she's doing everything wrong, and she's the one imposing her authority. And now all of a sudden, قالت, she says, she cried out, ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا. And in Tajweed, so he pointed this out to me, it's so awesome. Listen to this. ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا إلا أن يهجر. Oh my God, there's a mud. You can recite it beautifully. ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا إلا أن يسجن إلا أن يسجن. The extended vowels as if to illustrate the cry that she made, the wailing. What should I? And she's dramatizing, and in a split second, Oscar award, performance, where she's just devastated and broken, and she's such a victim because he was trying to take advantage of her. And she finally found her husband. My Sayyid is here. My husband, my rescuer. Oh my God, you're here. And she says, ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا. Two ways of translating this. I'll go with one dramatic translation and the other dramatic translation. One dramatic translation is, how should we reward someone? What should be the reward for somebody who wanted evil for your family? Someone who had evil intentions for your family. How should we reward a person like that? You see, the word reward is important here. She didn't say, how should we punish a person like that? How should we reward a person like that? You know why? Because Yusuf's also getting rewarded, isn't he? Good job, Yusuf. Excellent suggestion. Good job with that meeting. Good job with this counsel. Good job with this. Good job with this. Reward, 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 right? She knows he's proud of him. And now it's like she's saying, oh, you proud of him, huh? You proud of him, huh? What do you want to reward him with now? You want to reward somebody? What should be the reward of someone who tried to do evil to your own family? So first of all, she's crying. She's playing the victim. Then she's going forward and saying, oh, you still think highly of him? You still think he should be rewarded? So she's trying to drop him with the words jaza. So she's very skilled. Like if you guys play video games, when you have one target, you can only shoot at one target at a time. Then you lock on the other target and you can lock on the other. But there are some weapons, you shoot it once and it sprays. That's what she's doing. She's hitting multiple targets at once, man. That's genius. I'm in awe. First of all, the switch from get over here, like, Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. Sorry for the video game. But first of all, from the evil get over here, I'm the authority to, oh my God, I'm the victim. I can't believe this is happening to me. Oh my God, my husband, thank God you're here. The switch to the victim is so split second. It's amazing. And then on top of that, there is what should be the reward, meaning change your opinion of him right now. All those times you thought he was worthy of reward, fix that. And then she says, man arada. Every word she says, man, man arada. What should be the reward of someone who intended? She's not talking about his actions. She's talking about his intentions. She didn't say, what should be the reward of someone who did something wrong to your family? Who intends something wrong with your family, and that's the key. In an investigation, if you want someone to pass judgment on somebody else, then you don't go after their action. You have to paint the picture to illustrate their intention. If you can get somebody to judge the intentions, then no matter what action they do, they will say, but you probably did this good action for that bad intention. I already know your intention, so now I can interpret all of your actions for the wrong reasons. You see? Because once you've got somebody clocked for the wrong intention, then they can't do anything right. Then it's all gone. You see? If you don't judge somebody's intentions, if you first look at the action, look at the evidence, and then try to conclude perhaps from evidence or testimony or whatever, investigation, then you try to conclude intent. That would be a neutral way of investigating. Criminal investigations should be like that, isn't it? A lawyer can't go in front of a judge and say, this guy intended to do this, this, this. You can't prove intention. Intention happens inside the heart. You can show us a chain of actions, a series of actions, statements, evidence, and these evidences are enough to ascertain, okay, this person had this intention. That this was intentional, this was not an accident, right? But here, she knows that this is a time where emotions are going to run high. The man's going to see his wife, and she's crying. And he sees Yusuf, and he's not thinking straight enough to know which way the shirt is ripped. He just knows he's got a ripped shirt, and he's trying to cover himself. How badly it's ripped, we don't even know. Qadda, by the way, means ripped vertically. So it's basically like it's not a shirt anymore. It's become a jacket, backwards. that's what's happened. So it's torn open, right? So he's trying to cover himself in some way because he's embarrassed that he's exposed. So he knows that his clothes are, off. There's something off about his clothes. And then on top of that, she's crying. So emotions are running high. And now she says, this is what he intended. This is what he wants. So she's trying to paint a picture where he premeditated this. Like he planned this. So everything that she was doing, she's flipping the script and turning it on him. Now notice also the play on words. The words for her were rawadat. Yeah? Rawadatu. Rawada comes from the same origin as irada. Arada bi ahlika su'an. Rawadatu. She wanted him to slip from himself. And the word for intention that's used here is the same origin. As if Allah is showing us an in'ikas. It's flipped. It was her evil intent, her seductive attempt. And she's trying to make it look like it's him. So that's the intention piece of this. Man arada bi ahlika. Someone who intends evil. Such an unthinkable thing. Su'an. Bi ahlika. To your family? You're going to let someone go that does this to your family? What kind of man are you? Another man can do that to your wife and you're just going to take it? That's the kind of man you are? You see, when she says family, your family, she didn't say, what should be the reward of someone who did this to me? Right? Or to an innocent person. No. She's trying to get at the chivalry and the possessiveness and the manhood of her husband, challenging it. What kind of man are you? What are you going to do about it, huh? You're just going to let him get away with it? I'm holding back from my acting performance, but I'll get puppets for you. But the idea that she's now, aggravating him to the point where he's like, if I'm a man, I better do something. Okay, what are you going to do? Just, you want to think about it, huh? What, you want to examine the evidence? Oh, really? I can't believe you. What kind of man are you? This is how you protect your family? I've already told you what happened. And the thing is, with people like that, when they're wrong, then in order to make themselves right, they get more dramatic, louder, more aggressive, because somehow raising your voice makes you more correct. It doesn't. But it can feel pretty compelling at the time. So she's now made this dramatic scene where she, the criminal, is portrayed herself successfully as a victim, and questioning her will be an act of injustice because she's such a victim. How could you question someone who's a victim, came to you crying? And then on top of that, how can you question your own family? And not siding with her means something's wrong with you because you're not enough of a family man. So remember I told you when she shoots her weapons, they come out in every direction? Just like those doors were locked, she's hitting multiple doors right now. Shut. It's really manipulative, what she's done. And it's very powerful that every phrase catches a psychological, agenda. And it captures a psychological agenda towards her goal. Now, what is her goal? Her first goal, arguably, Mufassirun argue, her first goal is to deflect blame from herself. Right? Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Her first goal is to take blame off of herself. Now I'm distracted.
Sorry.
What? Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, something about Islam. What was I saying? Her first goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Valerie. That was Valerie. That was my wife. She's awesome. Okay. Her first goal is to not let blame come on her, so I'm going to defend myself, and the best defense is put all the attention on him, flip the entire story, and make him look like the villain. Her second goal may also be, he's going to reject me? I'll show him what happens when you reject me. I'll show him. You don't walk away from me and I don't burn you. I'm going to let you know, and I'm going to have the world hate you. If you walk away from me, I will rip you to shreds. And I will make sure everybody else does too. In fact, I'll have other people do my job for me. You see the vindictiveness? Because she's been rejected? Because she didn't get what she wanted? Now she's turned this way. Man arada bi ahlika su'an illa. Then she says, so one translation was, I told you there's two dramatic translations, yeah? One of them is, what should be the reward of someone who intends evil for your family, except that they should be thrown in jail? Or, you know what, better yet, some painful torture. They should get tortured, painfully. Because she's basically saying, al-jaza'u min jinsil amal. She's saying, I got tortured, I got hurt, he should be hurt back. You see what he tried to do to me? And the fact that she's saying adabun alim, first she said he should be thrown in jail. Yeah? And that could have been enough. He should be jailed. But she went a step further and said, no, he should be tortured. Now that could be for two reasons. It could be for vindictive reasons. She wants to see him suffer. You hurt my feelings, so I'm going to hurt you physically. I'm going to make sure you bleed. I need to see you in pain because you hurt my feelings by rejecting me. And it's justified in her head. The second reason can be she's going out of her way to describe torture and painful hurt. Why? Because that will make her look more like the victim that's so badly hurt. Look at what she's asking for. She's not even saying it wasn't a big deal, just let it go, just throw him in jail. No. Better yet, some painful torture. As if everybody will think, wow, he must have done something real bad. That's why she's asking for painful torture. So it makes him look worse when she says this. So the liar can be even more passionate in their victimhood when they're calling for this. They're calling for this justice. You know? Now, let's pause here for a second. Let's say somebody back then, when she got to the door and she made this cry, had an iPhone. And they had an iPhone and they were recording. Yeah? They were recording her testimony, they were recording Yusuf, they were recording the husband like freaking out, like losing his mind, and then they paused. And they posted on YouTube. And they posted on Facebook. And they posted on Instagram. And they posted on social media. What kind of comments do you think we're going to get in the video? Who is the world going to incinerate? Are they going to say she's lying? Are they going to say that she has evil intent? Or are they going to say, I can't believe some of these animals? Who is this person? They should be jailed. No, torture is worse. We should execute in public. There would be a lynching online from the video footage, from this much testimony. Yes or no? Yes or no? What I'm trying to get at is this works to this day. To this day. And mafia justice is actually now a way of life. We watch footage of anything from a racist, exchange, police brutality, abuse, whatever. We see a 10-second clip and the world goes crazy. Then you find out it was actually a 30-second clip and there was a lot more to the story and we didn't know. Right? Or then one side never got to say their piece. They never got to say, and it's too late. And if they do try to say it later, they'll say you're shaming the victim. You're blaming the victim. They're the victim. We're going to stand by the victim. Look at this video. They're clearly the victim. Right? So you can manipulate evidence. You can manipulate a mob and create a reality that can railroad people. You can absolutely do that. And that's the attempt she's making with Yusuf alayhi salam. The only thing that should happen to him is either he should get thrown into jail or at the very least, painful punishment. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam is as much in shock at her ability to be a transformer as anybody else, because a second ago, she was no victim. If anybody was running and wanted to escape, it was him. And when he hears this outcry and this dramatic, claim in front of the husband, trying to, exercise the husband's emotions, by the time she's yelling and screaming, who's also showing up? Servants, family, anybody in the house is like, what's going on? And now a crowd is gathered. They weren't all already gathered at the door, guys, to open the door. Who was only at the door? The husband. But now everybody showed up. There's other servants, cooks, or whatever. There's a security guard. And it also seems, the most plain reading of it is, some of her family, her cousin, her uncle, whoever, was also at home. Or the husband brought him home with him. So some of his own in-laws. And he also now shows up at the door. And now this is taking place in front of them. And now Yusuf alayhi salam says, Hiya rawadatni an nafsi. Actually, she's the one that tried to seduce me. He's not going out of his way to be emotional, or he's not giving the full, he's just saying very calmly, in fact, she's the one who tried to seduce me. calm, cool. But his testimony is not nearly as dramatic. It's not nearly as convincing because it didn't move me emotionally. Right? Because once my feelings get moved, that's how I know something is true. I mean, just look at his face. He's so calm. How could he be telling the truth? Just look at it. He didn't say anything else. If he was innocent, he would have said a lot more because he would have satisfied my personal, desire to be convinced. Because until I'm convinced, you're clearly guilty. In court, we say innocent until proven guilty. In the world of speculation, we say guilty until proven innocent. And what is guilt? Look at his face. Clearly he's guilty. Look at those eyes. Those are guilty eyes. Look at that. That's a guilty shirt if I ever saw one. Guilt. We presume guilt because we've seen it a million times, right? Oh, I know what guilty people look like. And that guy, let me tell you, guilty. So because we somehow have insight into the unseen. And we presume such, innocence and guilt on other people. Every case, when it comes to justice, every case is unique. Every situation is unique. And no case can be judged based on your experience of a previous case. If you do that, that's actually by definition injustice. When you lean this way or this way. When something is making you lean against someone before they even say something. Whether it's their appearance, whether it's their, your prejudice against their gender, whether it's your prejudice, it's the fact that you don't like them. You already didn't like them. You have other prejudices, and if they get in the way of you being just, or me being just, and this is exactly what, ta'dilu. Adala in Arabic means to be fair. Adala also means to deviate. To deviate from course, to turn over. Allah says, i'dilu huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa. Remain straight. Stay away from deviating in course. That's the closest thing you can get to taqwa. Justice itself. Fighting our biases against somebody if we don't like them. Because what's fair is fair. What's right is right. Evidence speaks for itself. Evidence is blind. Evidence doesn't have emotions. A judge can't have emotions. But today, obviously, the more compelling a message is, the more emotionally captivating it is, the more truthful it becomes. And that's just not the case. That's just not how life is. That's not how justice works. That's definitely not, but that's how mob justice works. Now, on the one hand, you've got, هي راودتني عن نفسي. Think of it from a tajweed point of view. The syllables in her speech. ما جزاء من أراد بأهلك سوءا إلا أن يسجن أو عذاب أليم. And he says, هي راودتني عن نفسي. Well, actually, she tried to seduce me. That's it. That's all he says. He's got nothing more to say. How did she try to seduce you? What are you trying to say? No, I have nothing more to say. What? What did you just say? I said what I had to say. That's it. There's no more. And everybody's up in arms. Obviously, you have a servant, no matter how good. And you've got servants generally. And you've got a royalty. And she's a female. Who are they going to side with? Who's everybody going to side with? Her. And by the way, employees might even side with her, because if they don't side with her, they could lose their job. And even if they think they've seen other behavior from her, and the cook is going, yeah. Because they know her, right? They live with her. So even if they're rolling their eyes and saying, I know this is bogus, they're not going to say anything. Because if they say something, they'll get in trouble. Their jobs are on the line. So what does the Quran say? It says, وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا. A witness from her own family. Ahl can mean family, can mean house. But here I would suggest it means family. A witness from her own family testified, spoke up. And this is important. Speaking up and testifying, meaning there's a group, and everybody's up in arms, and maybe the owner of the house has had Yusuf grabbed by the servants while she's crying, because he hasn't figured anything out yet, and there's a commotion, and in the meantime, her uncle or cousin, whoever he is, he's just looking at him. He's looking at her. He's kind of like, he's seen life. He's watched some Judge Judy episodes or something. But he's just looking at her and looking at him. He's observing. And I have something to say. Kind of calmly. And you can tell he's calm by the language. It's long-winded speech. It's actually long speech. Let me tell you his speech. He says, إِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ قُبُلٍ فَصَدَقَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ وَإِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ فَكَذَبَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. If it happens to be the case that his shirt was ripped from the front, then she's spoken the truth. And he is from, listen to the translation, he is from the liars. He is from the liars. I'll come back to this. And if it happens to be that his shirt is ripped from behind, then she lied. And he is from the truthful. So he is from the liars, and he is from the truthful. It's interesting. When it came to her, he said, she told the truth, or she lied. Just two words. She told the truth, she lied. But when it came to Yusuf, how do you describe him? He is from the truthful, or he is from the liars. He could have just said, well, by the way, you didn't have to say all this. All you could say is, look at his shirt. Because you see, if his shirt is ripped from behind, there's no if, he's right there. It's not like they're going to go find the shelf in the window, the shirt in the window somewhere. He's got the shirt on. It's right there in his hands. So you don't have to say the word if. And it could also be that by this time Yusuf alayhi salam is kind of holding on to his shirt and it's also come just in his hands because it's ripped out from behind. So like, let's open this shirt up. Let's look at what's going on with this shirt. But the language is so drawn out. If it happens to be the case that his shirt is ripped from the front and she lied and he's from the truthful, here's a much more brief way of saying it. If his shirt's ripped from behind, she lied. When you say she lied, it already assumes what? He told the truth. You don't have to spell that out. And you don't have to give the alternative scenario either. So this is a pretty long-winded, thing to say. I believe the long-windedness of it plays an important role for a couple of reasons. One of them is that this is a high-stress situation and everybody's yelling and screaming or commotion, and he's just calmed down and just help. And when you spell something out and give people time to think in a high-stress situation, then they're like, because if you just say she lied and she told, no, what are you saying? No, let me finish what I'm saying. Just hear me out. And when you spell it out like that, what does it give you? What does it give the audience, the mob that's ready to lynch with their pitchforks? That's ready to burn down? What does it give them time to do? Reset, calm down, bring the temperature down, let the brain cells start working again, right? And then he says, and if it were the case that his shirt was torn completely, like all the way through, from behind. Actually, first he says from the front. Then she told the truth. Then we have to believe her, because how could he be running from her and she want him and his shirt is ripped from behind? Would he just stand around while she did that? That doesn't make any sense. But he didn't just say she told the truth and he lied. He said if she told the truth and he's from the liars. Now why is that important? That he's from the liars. You see, if I say to you, you lied, then I'm talking about one act. But if I say I count you among liars, you are among liars as far as I'm concerned. Now what are you saying? You're not just saying you lied this one time. You're saying you cannot be trusted with anything, isn't it? So it's his family, it's her family. He's fair, but not in. And he's trying to assess the situation, but he won't make a character judgment on her. But he will say there should be a character judgment made on Yusuf, for better or for worse. So the first, which is why he never said she's from the liars or she's from the truthful. He's not going to make a character judgment on her because she's actually not on trial. Who's on trial? He is. So anything he says can be taken if he is considered among the truthful. Min as-sadiqin. And nothing he says will be of any value if he is min al-kadhibin. Because it's his testimony that's really on trial, not hers. She's the master of the house. He has to prove his innocence. He's on the hook, not her. So now, from that point of view, if in fact his shirt is ripped from the front, then she told the truth. And he is from the liars. He's telling the owner of the house, that means you trusted him all this time with all these responsibilities. If you can't even trust him with your wife, with this house, he can't be trusted with anything. This is not a singular incident. No servant of yours that can do that can be trusted with anything. And I can guarantee you, if this is what's happening, then he has scammed you and cheated you and lied to you in many other ways. So you need to investigate every responsibility you gave him and rethink. Maybe you handed him too much trust too quickly. If this is the case, you see? So that's actually pretty wise advice, because if some criminal was proven to be wrong in such a serious crime, and you didn't trust him with so many things, then you have to wonder, what else did he mess up, right? Because if he can't be trusted with something sacred like somebody's wife, how can he be trusted with the bank account? It takes a lot less shame to steal, a lot less shamelessness, you know. It would take a lot less shamelessness to do other, shady things with the amana that you've been given. This takes way more audacity. This is way more obscene. So he says he can't be trusted at all. But if it is the case that his shirt is ripped clearly from behind, min duburin, then she lied. We think, oh, she lied this one time, but let's not make a judgment. She's family still, right? So she lied because he sees that the boss is, or the master is conflicted, and Yusuf is a favorite of his. He is angry, but he's still trying to figure out how to weigh things. And he says, well, huwa min as-sadiqin, and he is the kind of man that can be trusted no matter what. Actually, even in a pressure situation like this, he had the guts to tell you that she tried to seduce you. What husband wants to hear about his wife, she tried to seduce another man? It's a brave thing for Yusuf to even say, alayhi salam, to the guy's face, she tried to seduce me. Instead of saying other words like, that's not what happened. Or let me explain. He could use safer words, right? But these are pretty offensive words to hear for her and for her husband. But he was so blatantly truthful that the man who's passing judgment on this as an independent witness is actually saying the kind of guts that took for him to say what he said actually means he can be trusted in any situation. He can just be trusted. وَهُوَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. So this is the scenario that we find the story moved to at this point. And in this scenario, what Allah Azza wa Jalla has taught us is, as I tried to walk you through, the testimony part, and the running from the door part, and the changing of the story part, and the victim, the culprit, the wolf becoming the sheep being painted as the wolf, that whole part, these are all very real things that happen in life. But as a caveat, the last thing that I want to share with you is Yusuf alayhi salam, perfectly innocent. And in this case, the minister's wife, perfectly guilty. 100% innocent, 100% guilty. But we're not Yusuf. We're not Yusuf. Sometimes we're partly innocent, partly guilty. Partly innocent, partly guilty, partly innocent. It takes two people, and sometimes you are completely innocent, and something wrong's been done to you. And other times you're not completely innocent. You have done some wrong also. My advice to all of us, when we learn from the stories of the Quran, to take from them and to put ourselves, oh, you know what, that means I'm like Yusuf alayhi salam, they did this to me. Wait, hold on. If you're going to make that jump, then you better be as innocent as who? Yusuf alayhi salam. And if you're going to say this person is like, this minister's wife, if you're going to make that jump, you better know that that person has no good in them whatsoever. You understand? We don't have that kind of clean slate. So you can say that some of this can apply in a situation, in some respects, but when we try to put this on ourselves, we have to be honest about what part of it was our wrongdoing. Even if, for example, you did this much wrong, they did 10 times more wrong, okay, well, you still did 1 time wrong. That doesn't justify their 10 times wrong that they did to you, but that doesn't erase your wrongdoing either. Right? That's just justice. Justice is, if you're even 1% wrong, or if somebody's criticizing you, and they're 1% right, that 1% should be acknowledged. Yep, that's right. I don't agree with this, but this is right. This is in fact my mistake. You see, like with the case of Musa alayhi salam, when they tried to kill him for the death of the soldier, he says, I did it. I did it at the time. But, there are other wrongs. They tried to kill him without a trial, without finding out what actually happened. There was no proceedings. They just, يَقْتَمِرُونَ بِكَ لِيَقْتُلُوكَ. They're scheming to kill you. But the part that he was accused of, did you do this wrong? He says, yeah, I did this wrong. I did commit that crime. So you have to acknowledge at least the part that you did wrong, and not have other things piled on top. In his case, when he has done nothing of what's being said, he can come out straight and say, actually, she's the one who tried to seduce me. That's the truth of it. And I don't believe that he would have even said those words about her had she not tried to slander him. Like, he wouldn't have even said those words. He would have ignored, because he would have been more forgiving and honoring of the family or whatever. But the fact that he got slandered, he has to at least speak up. And it's interesting, instead of saying, I'm innocent of what she says, he actually comes out and says, actually, she's guilty of something, not me. I had no hand in this. So a balanced approach to learn from the stories of the Quran, male or female. And that's the final thing I want to say as a reminder to myself and everybody. In this case, there is a female that's flipping the script, playing the victim and all of that. But that doesn't mean this is a lesson only to be learned by females. The brothers of Yusuf a.s. were jealous and did harm. That doesn't mean that only brothers do that, sisters don't do that. Right? So this isn't about a gender. There can be some things that are attributed to a gender in some respects, but this actually isn't about a gender. This is about manipulative behavior. That's what this is about. We're missing the point if you and I start thinking, this is Allah incriminating females over males, or brothers over sisters. We're missing the point. As a slave of Allah, when you and I read this, we're learning what not to do, what to look out for, wherever it comes from. Can such behavior come from a man? Absolutely. It can absolutely come from a man. Can there be, for example, harassment at the workplace by a man? And then when he's about to get caught, he flips it and says, actually, she's been wanting to, whatever. And can he flip it? Sure. Can somebody use their credibility, their social status, whatever? Can they use that to claim, to berate somebody else? Put their reputation on the line and destroy somebody else's character? They certainly can. A man can do that, a woman can do that. This is not about whether it's a man or a woman. So I don't want you to get caught up in that part of the problem. This is the game of shaitan. بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. You'll become enemies to each other. Let's not lose on the point that's being made here. What's also being taught by way of the testimony that was recorded is when there are lots of noises about the intention and how evil the intention is, how manipulative the intention is, and she was very passionate about it, maybe it's a good thing to step back and hear testimony that is neutral. Testimony that's neutral. The other really interesting thing about all of this, and I'm going to leave you guys with it. Where did all this happen? This happened indoors. This happened at the door of the bedroom, yes? So who knows that Yusuf is innocent? These few people. And the testimony that's happened is for people that are involved in this case, yes? And what spreads outside, so this happened in the bedroom, or in the hallway. But what spreads outside, do you think it's going to be exactly what happened inside? By the time one of the cooks goes home and talks to his wife, or talks to his brother, or talks to his cousin, the kids over here, they talk to each other. By the time this is spread in Egypt, do you think it's the same version that happened here? Or is there some, what the desis call mirch masala added? Some spices added to the story here and there? Exaggerated form? Are there memes being made about it? Are there blogs being written about it? Speculative articles, op-ed pieces. Is that what's going to start happening? Yeah. The thing is, testimony happens in an environment where the actual witnesses to the event are there. But what spreads far and wide, is not actually what happened in there. It's the version of it that's the most entertaining. So that's actually what spreads outside. And Yusuf a.s. innocence is not going to spread outside. That's not going to spread outside. The scandal about his wife will spread. But nobody will come out and say Yusuf did no harm. They're not going to say that. Actually, they're not going to go out of the way. Because what do they get out of proving his innocence? That's not juicy. You know what's juicy? Oh, she liked him. She wanted him. She fell in love with him, etc. Those are the words that are going to spread. When a matter like this, a sensitive, delicate matter like this happens, then the proper authorities should get involved. If there needs to be a court trial, then a court trial needs to happen. If the family needs to sit together and sort it out, then the family needs to sit and sort it out. But the larger public will only give rise to hearsay. If there is an actual conflict, the right people need to be involved. This is the same way when a husband and a wife have an argument, right? Or they're about to fall apart. And they say, we can't communicate with each other. We need to figure this out. What does Quran say? Find someone sensible from his side, find someone sensible from her side. He doesn't say she should go talk to all her friends on Facebook and tell what's going on, and then she should make memes about how her husband treats her or whatever, or posts and videos and whatever, and he should do the same thing with all his friends and his mother and his grandmother and his, whoever, and then the whole community is talking about them having trouble. That's really going to help the situation, I think. What is the Quran? When there is a conflict, either solve it yourselves or get the right people involved and solve it, fix it. Because the larger, getting the mob involved, that's only done by those who have evil intent. So it's interesting that right now, so far as we've read it, she's the villain, right? But actually, in some sense, she will also become a victim. If you're looking at it entirely fairly, she will also become a victim. Because whatever she did wrong, that's going to get blasted outside. And she's going to be humiliated publicly for it. Whatever wrong she did, that's not the pay for it. That's not justified to do that to somebody for their wrongdoing. The criminal proceeding should happen. Justice should happen. But that kind of hearsay-based shaming, that should not happen. That's not okay. So the Quran will paint this sort of balanced picture of how we are to look at such situations. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect all of us and protect our dignity, and may Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who people are safe from our hands and our tongue and the emotions we have in our hearts. I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal makes us the kind of ummah that when we say salam to each other, when we say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, we actually mean I am a source of peace, safety, and calm for you in every way, and I pray Allah gives you that too. And when somebody responds, they've actually delivered their actions and their intent to us also, so that we actually become an ummah of peace and calm, especially when it comes inside our families. These conflicts, they don't happen between distant people. These conflicts happen between friends and families and people that are close in your life. And so this is where we have to look out for, these kinds of fitan. May Allah to protect all of us and our families from these kinds of trials. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. السلام عليكم.